a whole little bucket of flash drives.
Well,
Do we have a flash drive?
we don't even do flash. Well, we don't just do flash drives. We just have because it's all. I already have it electronically. He sent it to me.
Yeah. Okay. I went into a panic last
Now,
night.
unless you want to if you want to give it to me, but I have it electronically, so I would have no reason to ever open that.
That's fine. You started finding we had a show today, but I don't know.
If you guys, because it's during public comment, so you may not have a lot of time to still talk. Because it'll still be those same rules during public comment time.
All right.
So, but when you see my PowerPoint, how I did it, you guys' stuff is already up there.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
You are a funny man.
Joe.
So that as the meeting comes on, people have to go in here and see when somebody's talking there and somebody walks in behind them. So I just wanted to let you know that I locked those doors.
Okay, great.
So I think talk a little bit, and then you're gonna, add comments or edits or interject where you see it.
Yeah, I will do that. Excuse me.
And I'm going to be controlling everything from here. I'm not going to go up there. And the way that I think he's going to do it is that I'm going to do it by sections. So he'll let us present by sections, and then he'll open up for public comment. So it's going to be kind of a, but we're not going to respond back to them. It'll just be our normal standard kind of public comment process, except for it'll be after each section. That way they can kind of stay.
Hey, John. Thanks. It's great to be in my seat.
I've seen.
Oh, it's okay. I could have stayed another week.
Don't ask him. Please.
Could have stayed another week.
When I first started.
The best part is I missed winter.
You don't know anything about it, but this late Mayor Oak has been there.
Oh my God.
And I've seen it all.
Yeah. Okay.
paper. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I'd like to call our special call meeting on February 22nd to order. This is the third meeting that we have had on this subject, ordinance, annexation, and the first two have gone in a particular format where staff was really presenting to council sections that have been, where there were suggested changes by the community. Council responded, etc. So if you listened or attended, we would call that format. This is a different format. This format will be open for citizen comment. And I think that's what we had been planning now throughout, that by the time we got to February 22nd, there would have been sufficient exchange between the count, from staff and the community to be able to get into really begin to look at the specifics, any specific issues that may have arisen. So we have that. That's somewhat the easy part. The challenge that we've had this morning is how to present that. It's a very, we have a lot of paper, as you can see, binders and the like. We have posted this information on the website so the community at large has this, and certainly all of you in attendance have it. So we have an approach that we'd like to take in terms of how to present this information to make it as constructive as we can, and that really for those in attendance and those listening can be able to follow the discussion, the dialogue throughout. So that's what we're going to try to do. And I thank Stephanie and John for putting this together, and the community for putting their comments together. To emphasize a point, we'll go section by section. It is just too much information if we go back and forth to be able to follow, what's being said. For those of you that may have been paying a lot of attention to it, you may understand the discrete differences between some of the sections. If you start reading it, it's like one great big blur. It just all begins to, go together. So I think it would be unfair to anybody that hasn't spent a great deal of time on this, to be able to follow it. However, at the end of the session, we will take community comments at large. So if you're here, fine. If you're sending your comments in to Stephanie or Petra, fine. And we'll try to make sure that everybody has a chance, an opportunity to have input. Council, once again, listen, ask questions, provide direction. At the conclusion of the February 22nd, and I've tried to say this, emphasize this a couple of times, if we feel that there's been sufficient dialogue and clarity and agreement, understanding agreement, then we will ask Stephanie and Joe and John to proceed for the March council meeting to take the policy, the annexation policy, to council for approval as a resolution. If there's not, then we'll have workshops in March until we get this worked out, and then we'll proceed into April. You all know this, but just again to emphasize, there's a new addition to it, and that is we have a policy now which we didn't have back in February 8th. So the policy in and of itself is a large document. The two sections on ordinance, if we feel that there's clarity and we're in agreement, we have to turn those to the Planning Commission, correct? And the Planning Commission will then take the month of March for their review and then bring it to council again, if we're in agreement, in April. So as I've said before, there's no rush on this, so we're going to make sure that we get it right. This is a too important document for future councils, future mayors to be able to assess what's taking place this spring. Okay, so that's the plan. So we'll go through it section by section. Stephanie will kind of guide us through. We'll have citizen comments. You'll be able to reflect either whatever. It's your comments. And we'll go through it, and then we'll see where we're at the end. So I think that is what I want to say. So Steph, you want to get started?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I'm going to just touch on the proposed policy that's before you, and then, of course, once we're done with that, as the mayor said, we'll turn over to John, and John will handle the sections 1279 and 12159. What I'll do with regards to the policy, there's, with the community group that's here, they looked at this document. I was able to incorporate some of the things that they've put in, which I thought was some good suggestions. Things that may be small, I'm not going to touch on because either staff, I said, yep, I agree, and that is highlighted in red. Some of the things are highlighted in red for you. And there's some of the other things that we have about 7 or 8 bullets that I will touch on, and please feel free to, when it's essentially, please feel free to ask myself or ask Joe any questions as it relates to it. Okay, the first one I have here is and the way that I'm trying to format this, as the mayor said, I struggled with how to try to present this, and I'm trying to present it in a way that hopefully everyone understands. But what you have is the part up here, of course, 1.2, the town's comp plan. This original is the staff's original language that we had proposed. And then over here is the community that's here. This is theirs. Now, all of this is theirs. One of the things that, the reason why it may be highlighted in red as well as in purple is because as you guys are looking at it and talking about it, there could be things in here that staff, we don't object to. If there's some language in here you want us to add, we're fine with, eventually merging it together or using this language and not using ours. But then one of the things that we did want to note is that in their language, and because it's, there's a lot of things that may say shall or shall be, and we would just consider changing that to shall consider or some other similar language. But ultimately, staff, we believe our language is clear, and of course we would support our language, but we are more than willing and open to look at incorporating some or all of their language, if that's what council prefers. What I've done for 1.2 is they've put together, they've taken some time, and I wanted to make sure that I share this and reflect it. They've taken time to comment, and they've submitted that to me last night, and I forwarded all that to you guys, so you guys also have a hard copy. They have submitted their comments essentially to our comments or our proposal. And as I already said, we believe the language shall be, should be rolled back to shall consider. And one of the things here that they have talked about is that eliminate the reference to annexation as a goal of town of Kiawah Island. They said annexation is never stated as a Toki goal, nor should it be. And then they also state that quotes directly from the comp plan. This is their language that you guys have. And one of the things that I just pointed out is that in my language, which I think I did reference, I think I said it's GA, but it's actually should be 4. I said 3G, but I believe it should be 4A. But our comp plans, in the appendix of our land use element, it is listed as an actual goal. And then this is the implementation strategy for that. And so ultimately, I just kind of repeated that, staff recommendation is that if we decide to go with the language from the group, we would just recommend that we adjust that shall be to shall consider. Sir? Anything, Joe, that you'd like to add before we turn it over?
No,
Okay. That concludes my...
Anybody would like to comment on that? I mean, help clarify that? Yes, sir.
You have to go up for the record. State your name and address.
Yeah.
And if you need for me to go back to your language, just let me know.
Yeah, if you go back to the your purple and blue, Tim Hazel, 283 Governor's Drive. Just a question: what is the reason that you are uncomfortable with shall be versus shall What was your proposal?
Shall consider or similar language.
Okay,
I just think, I mean, as a lawyer involved here, that it becomes more restrictive of what council can do. It applies, you know, the environmental issues are ultimately controlling in all kinds of aspects. So I just, as a lawyer, I'm concerned about being being mandatory.
so you're saying shall consider versus shall be evaluated is what you're proposing?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
Well, that's the way it exists.
I don't,
Or that's how staff originally proposed it. I preferred staff's language.
okay. I just wanted to understand that. I think that's good.
Council?
I have an initial thought on the suggestion. The town of Keo Islands, this is from the citizens, 2015 comprehensive plan. The plan existed well before 2015. It was last updated in 15. It's going to get updated again this year. I think we just need to refer to, in either side, to the plan since it existed long before 2015. I wouldn't want to nail that thing into the ground. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does.
I've read these, I don't know how many times, they both sound so similar. I mean, you have to really, you know,
I think that's, yeah.
suffice to say that over the next couple of weeks, Stephanie, in the broadest context, suffice to say that over the next couple of weeks, you can, as you had done before, work with the group to come up with language that would be, is there anything substantive in these two columns that?
We'll work with the group. If everyone is,
It's close. I do understand their comment that goal, I don't know that it's a goal of the town to expand.
Right. I
So
understand
that's
that.
I'm-
something that, I think that's a policy, and that's either way is fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's just in our
agree.
comp plan.
yeah, I understand.
Okay, we'll move on.
Anyone
Is that-
else? Any other comments?
No, Stephanie.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
1.3.
Again, this is the town's staff's original language, which is just, I think, pretty clean and cut, dry. This is the group's proposal here. And I'll go to our comments.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think with regards to the group's language, captured here.
You're concerned about,
I mean, and this is, honestly, I mean, a lot of this is why I'm a little uncomfortable with some of the wordsmithing going on here. You know, Stephanie and John have a lot of experience in dealing with land use issues. And it might be nitpicky, but an annexation application is a request by a private owner or owners. Well, no, a government entity can make a request. The other thing I didn't like is, let's see. Oh, yes. You know, the town has the absolute right. Is this?
No, she's gotta go back once she goes.
Yeah.
There.
The town has the absolute right and its sole discretion to reject an annexation application. A lot of this is kind of restating existing law. And I just get a little nervous sometimes about doing that because someone's going to come from the opposite side and say, you've just limited yourself to what you can rely on or consider. Sometimes that kind of language can get turned against you. I mean, honestly, again, as a lawyer, I frankly have to look at these from the point of view of what might expose the town to some liability, and that would be from developers. So I got to look at this like an attorney for a developer might look at it and think about how this language limits the town, what kind of right. I don't think this is worded very well, and trying to recapture a law that's already in existence in a different area, you know, could potentially shrink that law, if that makes sense, that ordinance.
You have told us, Joe, many, many, many times, emphasizing clarity.
Yeah.
So if I follow what you're saying, in 1.3 initiation of annexation, in this particular case, brevity is better?
Say that again?
Well, that under 1.3, consistent with the South Carolina Code, blah, 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 that's brief.
Our
So
portion.
you're saying,
yeah.
you're saying that in that particular case, brevity is better rather than expanding
Oh.
it with definitions. So I'm asking,
Yeah, brevity, and it just,
is that what you're saying, or
Yeah.
we're suggesting?
that's part, yes.
So
And-
how does the existing law cover this last purple sentence that you're saying? Not quite sure we need to do that to restate. What does it say today?
Yeah, well, what existing law says is town council, in I think every situation, but the primary annexation procedures, town council has to vote by ordinance to accept the annexation. And implied in that state requirement is your discretion to accept or reject
At any point?
that annexation, just like this says, for any reason whatsoever. And so it's really, I mean, it's more of a formalistic problem I have with trying to restate that, and more importantly, what gets left out. I mean, the law is the law. It's a state law. We can't really change it. I want to make extra sure we don't limit what we're doing. And I know that's some pretty broad language, but it just, I mean, to me, it's stating the obvious.
So does this proposed language add anything that is substantively important? As
None of
opposed
this
to a
is
simple thing that says
substantive.
we're going to follow the law?
No, none of it is substantive. And it's really some fine tuning, some wordsmithing, as much as anything else. And if I had my druthers, I like the shorter one. I just don't want to be, you know, well, you didn't say this thing about annexation, you know, in your ordinance.
Okay.
In our policy manual?
Yes, I'm
In the
sorry,
policy.
the policy.
Comments?
Just-
Comments, sir?
Once again, Tim Hazel, 283. With all due respect to counsel, your counsel, not you counsel, I've been practicing in Pennsylvania and Ohio for 30 years as a land use development lawyer, and I generally represent developers. So when we were looking at this language, I think part of the issue isn't with 1.3, it's what we do deeper into the handbook. And what we do deeper into the handbook is we offer an opportunity for an annexation application to be parallel processed at the same time as a rezoning application. So what normally happens with a zoning application is the South Carolina law, as I understand it, gives the applicant certain rights. One of those rights is the applicant has a time period within which to expect a determination, and if that doesn't happen, it's deemed to be approved.
Right.
So what that goes to is not the annexation, the initiation of annexation, but it goes to what happens deeper into, you know, the manual. And I don't think it's surplusage.
I missed the last word, I'm sorry.
Surplusage, extra.
Oh.
You know, I think I think council had said that it's not necessary, and, you know, I would disagree.
You're referring to the last statement?
Correct.
What about the first statement? Does that really, it seems to me unnecessary.
Yeah, I think that if you look to what your staff had proposed, it is what it is within the statute, but I think that that was added because your staff took a position that the goal of annexation, which I think that notion now I don't think is going to flow through.
Right.
I think that was to address the point that, wait a second, the town is like a household. The annexation applicant is like somebody knocking on the door asking to come in. The town should have the absolute right. And if we take that notion, the overriding notion that it's a goal, then I'm not sure that that's necessary.
Gotcha. I would agree with that. Thank you.
Any questions?
Well, just to be clear, I mean, you would agree then that under state law, which we can't change, annexation is going to require a vote by ordinance, by council to accept.
Yeah, no, I have no doubt. I think
every, but one of the procedures like their own way, I think.
yeah, and I have no problem with that. I think that where the problem arises is you are also dual processing an application for a zoning issue. And if all we were looking at was a naked annexation application, I think your provision would be fine. Unfortunately, deeper into, and we don't dispute the propriety of this, but deeper into the manual, we give an applicant the opportunity to parallel track a zoning determination. And if you do that, you know, I think that you need to be pretty clear that, look, you know, we're going to do this not as we normally would. We're doing it as a benefit to you because we understand at some point you may want to withdraw your annexation application if it doesn't look like you're going to get the zoning that you're seeking. But in doing that, you open the door to vested rights and a whole bunch of other things.
But let me ask a question. If we have to vote to approve the annexation through an ordinance, and you have these parallel tracks, and we don't take action on the zoning, and so it becomes official, and then we don't vote for the annexation, isn't the whole zoning issue a moot point?
Not necessarily.
Because it's not our property.
Well,
we don't have the right to rezone it.
I understand.
If it's not in the town.
Well, you don't have the right to do anything with it prior to the annexation, but
Well,
you're opening the
there's
door
a
to that.
process, and I get that.
So I put my developer attorney hat on, and I say, well, wait a second. You can't deny me because you've opened the door to the zoning issue. You're treating me like I have an entitlement.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't agree with that.
I disagree, and more importantly, there is no pre-existing zoning that the town, any annexation that comes to us, that's zoned by the county, so they would have to have a zoning application at the time of their petition for annexation that is specific to the town's zoning rights. So I think that your argument at least to me, does not flow.
Well,
vested rights in South Carolina don't arise.
Well, I think that we have a presumptive zoning if there isn't. I believe in the annexation manual there is a provision that says if the applicant doesn't request, then the presumptive zoning is R1.
Right, yeah.
So you know, I think that we've opened the door by saying if you don't like R1, then come on in and we'll run you through the rezoning process at a time that we don't even have jurisdiction over your property.
But we're not going to vote to rezone it if we don't have jurisdiction over it. We're going to let that process start.
But you have made a determination, and they can't pull their annexation application once you have told them that we will give you the zoning that you're requesting. If something happens and you change your mind, you can't go back because they've already annexed the property. So I think the point is that, you know, by opening the door.
No, we would not have annexed the property.
No.
Either party can take it out at any time.
Well, I would say that in that one instance, there's other instances where an applicant is running through the zoning application process. The parallel path of the process of the annexation application is occurring simultaneously. The zoning applicant, it seems to be comfortable with the fact that once the property is annexed, that it will get the treatment that the applicant has requested. What happens if you allow for the annexation and for some reason you make a determination that what you had presented as a presumptive zoning treatment, if that changes, now you have a problem, because even though the applicant wasn't entitled to engage in our zoning process, you've opened the door and said, come on in and we're going to look at your zoning.
I just don't agree with that.
I hear you, but
I mean, it sounds to me like you're objecting to the larger concept of running the two things in parallel.
no.
I really don't understand what this language has anything to do with it.
Well, I think that what the discussion that we just engaged in was, if I am representing a developer who is led to believe that they're going to get a PD, by way of an example, you allow for the annexation and it turns out I don't get the PD, I'm going to sue you on the basis that there was some sort of presumptive, vested right that I had.
Well, that would be unusual. I mean, obviously, we can't guarantee not getting sued by developers. I would just point out that most towns in South Carolina that address this issue, and a lot of them do something very similar to what we're doing.
No, I don't dispute that. And, I guess the argument is everybody else is doing it is one that can be dangerous.
But doing them in parallel doesn't mean that they're done in a vacuum where one doesn't know what's going on with the other. So the likelihood that you're gonna, misstep along the way, I think you're probably
Well, but there are zoning challenges. I mean, there are challenges to a zoning that, maybe I'm belaboring this, but that's the reason was that.
I think this is a valid issue, and I mean it's valid in the sense that there's a possibility here. I just asked to work that out. In one way or another, either downstream where there's language, or in this particular case.
I think what staff recommends is to keep our language because it's clear and it's simple. It doesn't complicate the discussion here, but I can talk with Joe.
And that's,
I would support staff in that.
and that's fine. What I would suggest, though, is you need to keep the definition of the applicant because that flows through the rest of the document. So you'll need.
Agreed, and that's what I have put on here, that we would support that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. 2.1. Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Brad Belt, 151 Bobcat Lane. I just wanted to, I think it's important for purposes of the record, following up in the conversation between Tim and the council, to address one issue. The council, I thought I heard him say a couple of times that the town council had to be concerned about potential developer lawsuits. And I want to make sure I understand what the basis of that lawsuit would be. Because I think part of what this is all about is, the added language, the town has the absolute right. Town council saying that's superfluous. But I think it's important to understand for the record, I would hope council would agree, that the town is under no obligation under South Carolina law or its own ordinances to act upon a request for annexation. That there is no basis for a developer to sue the town if the town simply chooses not to act upon a request for annexation, or is town council suggesting that the town is obligated to act upon a request?
No, of course
I don't think so.
not. It's not, that's the exact opposite of what I said.
Okay.
I'll say it again. Every annexation procedure under South Carolina law requires a town council accept an ordinance, accept annexation by ordinance, which requires 2 readings. That's a legislative process in which town council has the ultimate discretion to do whatever they want to do for any reason at all.
And that's,
And putting this language, my problem with it is you're trying to encapsulate a very broad law into one sentence. And I don't want it turned against us.
and how would that be turned against us? That's what I'm not,
Because it doesn't elucidate the entire law.
and what is the entire law that you're referring to?
The whole state annexation statutes and all the case law that goes with it and all the rules that go along with it. Those rules are there. And when you start, but I'm going to finish.
Sure.
As someone who's spent a lot of time writing ordinances for municipalities, when you start trying to restate rules that exist in another part of your ordinance or under state law, which is separate and apart, you run the risk of limiting your rights, not expanding them. I mean, we're all on the same page here in terms of the goal. And I just don't want to see language like this turned against us. It's really wordsmithing. It's really just a legal opinion. Council doesn't have to follow my opinion, but I since we're going to be delving into this pretty deeply, I just want to make clear that, and as I pointed out to a lot of people who should have heard this, these kind of zoning issues are generally not susceptible, and this is for council, and I've told them this. Our Supreme Court has said that a referendum is not a way to change zoning law. And there's a reason for that. The Supreme Court read that into the law, even though the statute didn't say it, the referendum statute didn't say it. The reason that is because zoning law in South Carolina has very specific procedures about how a town can go about changing that zoning law. It's got to start with a planning commission and goes through several procedures that are required by state law. And, you know, if we were here talking about some other issue outside of the zoning process, I would probably not have anything to say. But I do get concerned when it comes down to zoning, about zoning with this kind of group input. I'm going to speak my mind on this. I mean, I am just very concerned that this is being done by a group, an outside group, as opposed to planning commission, where zoning ordinances are supposed to originate. And you know, that's my concern. And when we start talking about language, especially picking the right language, I personally feel like I am much more comfortable with John and Stephanie, and frankly myself, who have decades of experience doing this and have seen all kinds of different ways people can manipulate the language against us. You know, I have an opinion based on that experience. John has an opinion based on that experience. Stephanie has an opinion based on experience. These are our opinions. And it's especially when it's wordsmithing, which is what all this is so far. I think that we're in a better position because of that. I've tried to explain particularly why I like this, don't like this language. It's kind of like how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. I will readily admit that. And I also kind of feel like that staff has substantively incorporated a lot of what's been suggested, which I'm perfectly fine with. But when it comes down to wordsmithing, I'm very uncomfortable with this kind of back and forth, especially talking legal issues, which are better suited for an executive session anyways.
Okay,
That's my opinion.
you said it, I understand, duly noted, okay, thank you.
Mayor, if I...
No, let's move on. This is too much time on 1.3. Please, I'm sorry. Let's move on.
Okay.
The next section.
2.1, a lot of words here. So staff best interest of municipality, essentially it's, you know, information as I think Joe just saying, it's what staff put together, and I think some of this a little bit maybe wordsmithing, but this is the group's recommendation. One of the things that staff has a concern with, what they would like to, you know, they would like to change the title to say the best interest of citizens. I believe the municipality, we're fine with making that title change. The concern that we have is defining the term citizen, putting a definition with that, and then including voters registered to vote in town election. I think as elected officials, of course, that's one of the things, but also your counsel to everyone in the community, everyone within, even our daytime tourists for the most part. But I understand, as Joe said, you know, this is what they would like to add. I think I accidentally pulled some words there together. I think that should be notwithstanding. Also here, just talk about if an applicant or an affiliate happens to be a citizen of the town, the applicant should not be entitled to receive any considerations or treatment above that of a non-citizen applicant. Again, I don't really understand the basis of that and why we will have that in there. And then stating that town council make a non-biased decision on each. I think you all do that. When you're considering any application, you try to take all the facts. So essentially, I think, you know, what I could, you know, for staff recommend suggestions that yes, we could definitely make that title change. We can say, you know, the best interests of the town of Cable community, or I think they would like to say citizens. But then other than that, we would recommend either keeping our language, reducing our language, or, you know, taking some of the things that they have here, which they do have, you know, some things in here that I think is fine, that we can somehow merge the two and incorporate those language. Joe, was there anything in there that you wanted to comment on?
No. No.
I find the last paragraph of the suggested language to be, oh, okay, sorry.
So I'll make this quick because it sounds like we may have the basis to work towards amending the staff's proposed language to incorporate some of this. But I think that it's important to note that why it is that we've added the language that a citizen who is an annexation application shouldn't, because in the case of like the Hallover parcel, that applicant could have been determined to be a citizen or an occupant of property within the township, even though it's property. And we wanted to make it clear that just because Tim Hazel has a piece of property next door, Tim Hazel shouldn't be treated any differently. And that's the sole reason for that.
And I think that's the way we operate in everything we do.
I understand, but I think that you don't read that in the suggested language. With that said, I think that we have something to work with.
Others?
Morning, Dave DiStefano, 31 Burroughs Hall. I want to comment on the term citizen, specifically owners of real property interests located within the town. That means the owner of Freshfields and every tenant in Freshfields that holds a lease. That's a property interest. And I think you have to consider what this annexation might do economically to the existing tenants at Freshfields. We don't know specifically what is going to come before this council as to what they want to put in the annexation. But my concern is if it is 160,000 square feet of commercial space and it makes this area much more attractive, the only way we could get enough customers to satisfy that additional 160,000 square feet of space is they got to be coming down from Johns Island. And that's going to exacerbate traffic. And we've been talking to the state and the county about improving our roads, et cetera, for traffic. And I'm concerned that they may interpret an annexation with this type of development as an exacerbation we're creating on our own. And I'm concerned about that. But the tenants and the owner of Freshfields are citizens under this definition, and we have to consider their interests.
So these changes aren't take into consideration a specific annexation action.
No.
This is
No.
generally how we want to handle things. And I
That's
think
right.
that, you know, I have to say it's odd that we would need something in the policy manual that says we have to act in an unbiased
Right.
way.
I
think
agree
that,
with
I
you.
don't understand why you would even suggest that.
This entire last paragraph is
Right.
pejorative in nature and
Yep.
makes basic assumptions that we're doing things that are not in the best interest.
Yeah, I
as
just-
a
I-
Yeah.
fault, and I find that just really insulting.
Let me go further. I think the first paragraph makes no sense. We're supposed to do what's in the best interest of this community. That involves all participants. When you start trying to define each individual interested party in this community, we will go nuts. And we're making it worse. Let's not try to define what a citizen is. We're supposed to do what's in the best interest of this municipality. That involves all interested parties, period. We got to take that into consideration. Leave it alone. Makes no sense.
Anything else, Mayor?
Comments?
Next.
Okay.
Just as a continued point of reference, and it may have been a rough fall in terms of going through the application for annexation. A lot of emotion, a lot of discussion. There is nothing on the table right now. Nothing.
Right.
We are looking at language within these policies. So kind of leave what took place in the fall back there, because when we bring it forward, it truly does add to the complexity of what we're trying to do. We're looking at this language in a totally objective basis. There is nothing looming out there, nothing at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next section.
Sorry, if you could go back. Jim Jurasik, 425C Lavender Court. I just wanted to make the point that my concern with the language that staff proposed on this is really one that converts this to more of a planning document than a procedures document. My view, I would suggest your view should be that this is a document to establish procedures. And we were very concerned when we read staff language that it was really something that belonged more in a comprehensive plan or if you redo it. So, hopefully we can work together. I understand your concerns. Hopefully we can work together. I also want to make the difficult, complicated point, and this is not to suggest at all that you have any prejudices or that you won't act in the best interest of the municipality, but there is a history here with the roots of the town are based in the roots of the developer. And there's a long history established with a couple of developers in the community you actually have development agreements with. And I think the idea was not to be insulting or to question your integrity, but really to express the concept that there should be some appearance of separation, that now is the time to create that appearance of separation. So I just wanted to make sure that you didn't feel we were questioning your impunity.
Well, I think you are. I think you are. I'm sorry.
Well, Marianne, I'm sorry about that, but that's not the purpose of it at all.
When you say
So-
we have to act and treat everyone the same,
Yeah.
equally, without biases, that's what we do. And that's
And
what
I'm
we try
saying,
and do.
I'm suggesting you'll do that, so. But I wanted to make the main comment about the planning, that's more of a planning type language. And if you decide that that's the right language to put in a planning document, that's certainly your discretion to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Hi, Mary Ellen Perugini, 24 Retz Bluff Road. I just wanted to say that some of what I'm hearing envelops sort of what you guys have in your head and what you know and what our town council knows. As a citizen, as a homeowner and a full-time resident, I would like some kind of a document when these kinds of issues come up, that if I read it, I want to be able to understand, and I don't necessarily want to have to go to the law to read the fine print of a law and make it a whole exercise. So I don't know if there's another document other than this that's just been described as procedural oriented, but I think we should do our best as a town to give documents to folks like me that want to be involved and want to understand and want to be able to ask the right questions without having us have to do a big project or have to have one-on-one conversations, and for me to call the mayor and say, gee, what about this, because that's a lot of phone calls going into him. So I would just interject that on whatever we're talking about, that I like it when language gives me a sense of, yes, we do act unbiased in everybody's fair interests. I don't know, honestly, as somebody who's been here and worked through town permitting and ARB, that comes across, quite honestly. There is, I think, some endemic stuff within the way that we have all these organizations and people that work for this person, work for this person, work for this person, that the experience of just someone like me is different than what I really appreciated you hearing, that of course we act like that, but that's not always what comes across. So I would argue that as long as we don't open ourselves up, as council said, to a lawsuit that is definable and say we can't put that language in because it really is too limiting, that I'd rather have it say those things in there. So that's just my 2 cents about the overall perspective.
Don't forget, we were elected by the citizens of this community and given the responsibility to serve.
Well, those are valid points, and thank you. And I think that part of why we've kind of embraced this policy is that it's broader, far more detailed, much greater clarity, much greater explanation than anything we had before. So I think that's maybe the goal that we're trying to get to, is that anybody can pick it up and to read through it, have some understanding. Okay.
Okay. The next section is 2.2, the feasibility study and cost benefit analysis. Again, the left is staff's original language. The right is the community, the group's language. For the most part, their language staff don't have a problem with if we decide to incorporate their language. The only thing is that we feel that it should be, instead of putting the 5 acres there, it should be left up to staff. We talk about, determine if it's complex or not, determine if we need, and we would present it to council ultimately, and council would make the decision because it becomes a cost factor. So if we decide to do hire a consultant, if it's for 3 acres and we need to be able to bring someone in, that cost is going to require us to go before the mayor and council for approval. One of the things, I just leave this up, but I think one of the things in the group's concern, and they gave us an explanation of why they wanted to, and I'm sure they'll come up, but my kind of how I'm reading this is that the reason why I think they put 5 acres is in here. They talk about essentially the Hollover Creek development, I guess, and just wanting to make sure that it's not left up to staff. I believe in case we decide that it's non-complex and it doesn't warrant a feasibility study, based on their language, anything over 5 acres would require. And I guess they have 5 acres where upzoning is not requested. For areas of less than 5 acres, annexation is not requested.
Why wouldn't you want a feasibility study on any?
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
Why wouldn't you want a feasibility study on any application?
Well, some may be small, but right now, within Kiowa, within the envelope of Kiowa, what people probably feel like is Kiowa, even if it's not in the town limits or not, is from the roundabout down to the front gate. As of right now, the only properties we're talking about, there's nothing less than 5 acres.
Right.
So even if there was an annexation, not unless somebody was to peel a piece out and wanted to subdivide that and make it 5 acres. And then of course we probably would, because in that case we would then want to consider the longer, or the bigger picture rather, of the remaining unincorporated properties. But right now within kind of envelope along the parkway, essentially I believe we have one main developer or owner, I should say, that owns everything, and so we're not. So none of it would be under technically would be under 5 acres. So that language is not, I'm not sure where that would apply, honestly.
So this kind of goes with what Joe was saying, that it kind of restricts you, because if you read what this says, it says that for areas less than 5 acres,
right,
the annexation studies may be prepared by the staff, but we also may hire a consultant.
Right.
So what is the, I mean, what's
Exactly.
the purpose of this? It's, you can do either one.
We
So
can
why
do
would
either
that
one.
happen?
Right.
I guess,
I think it's, you know.
It doesn't seem additive to the process.
Yeah, that
And
particular.
conversely, I could have a 10-acre piece of property that is very, very simple and could be evaluated by the staff.
By staff.
Very staff, without
Right.
having to hire a consultant.
Yeah.
So again, all of their language here, I'm fine with supporting that, and we can, if you guys feel comfortable, adopt a lot of that into ours, take ours out and use theirs. I would just take out the purple.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Just 1 second. They've also, along with their suggestions here, they've also discussed adding other topics for analysis, which their other comments, I didn't have a problem with that comment.
Okay.
Because I believe actually if they're talking about the same, oops, I'm sorry, I forgot to take that out up there. It should be 2.2. They're talking about other parts. I'm guessing I'm not sure what they're referring to, but I'll work with them and see, because we have something about possible environmental impact, so, which they have. I'm fine with that. Go ahead.
Sorry, once again.
Tim?
Tim Hazel. I think the intent there was not to put handcuffs on, but was to provide a mechanism to take an administrative determination out of their courts so that they don't have to deal with the possible claims that the use of discretion could result in. And, in Pittsburgh, for instance, there hasn't been an administrative determination for 10 years because of the lawsuits that stem from alleged improper use of discretion. And there are parcels, the church parcel or the putt-putt parcel. I think we saw a proposed plan that could have happened where the Hallover folks were going to subdivide a smaller portion off and come to the township with that smaller portion. I think that, if you read the comments of the concerns of the community, one of the concerns was, where is the support in studies to support what was proposed? That's the reason that's in there. We can discuss offline so that we don't waste time, but there may be another mechanism to help.
And one thing, I'm sorry, I just wanted to follow up, and we'll have discussions, is in their second bullet, option 2, under page 6, it's the 5th bullet that they've added, identification of services to be assumed or provided by the town, that may be warrant for the discussion of council.
Once again, this may just be me, but their underlying assumption here is that we provide different level of services for people depending upon where they are in the town or not town. And I just think that's redundant. I mean, we provide the services that we provide, and is unnecessary.
I would say, hypothetically, Tim Hazel again. Hypothetically, when you were looking at the annexation of Freshfields was a developed portion of property. And at that point in time, I assume that they weren't asking for the same level of services that were being provided beyond the first and second gate. So I don't know that that's surplusage or useless. I do think that you need to look at, are we going to need a police force? Will that police force perform the same services within the gate as outside the gate? So I don't think that
Those are the same. Those are the services that we provide in the town.
Yeah.
But I assume that in your annexation of Freshfields, you agreed that you weren't going to have to provide certain of the services that you provide beyond the gate.
No.
I can't vote.
No, we would have done the same things.
So you pick up their trash?
No,
in
well,
Freshfields.
remember, commercial trash is picked up under contracts.
Yeah.
The town does not pay for picking up commercial
Same
trash.
kind of, same thing kind of gate.
Just
Yeah, it's the same.
Exact same
Yeah.
service.
So
It's a valid point, but quite the contrary. One of the economics that we looked at when we annexed Freshfields was the fact that we would be providing more sheriff's coverage. Police coverage.
Right.
And we were balancing that versus the annexation revenues that would be coming in. So in order to make sure that we did.
So it's the exact same service. Same service.
At different level, though, I thought.
Brad McIlvain, 146 Blue Heron Pond Road. I think by definition you do provide different services because beyond the first gate you're not allowed to provide certain services where you may be able to provide certain services outside the first gate. Because that's the limitation, because Kika, it's an entity where Kika provides most of those services. So outside the first gate, you actually may be providing additional services, and I think it's warranted to at least look at them.
We provide outside. I don't know what we provide outside.
The only service, and it wouldn't be different, the only potential difference is when it comes to emergency management service.
But say, for example,
emergency service. So if there's a storm, the town, we go behind the gate and we do initial cut and toss. We do that for everyone. Behind the gate, if we have to do cleanup because it's a private gate using public funds, that's where we do have to determine how much we can clean up prior to getting FEMA's approval.
Would you do anything with roads? Would you take over the roads? Because Kika takes over the roads inside the first gate.
At this point, for any proposed development or if any proposed annexation, yes, that could be potentially if someone comes to the town and state that they want to be annexed, council could consider taking in the road. Council as municipality, they could also impose a special purpose district over that particular project to cover any infrastructure that we may have to put in.
So there are potential differences, though. That's all I'm pointing out, is there are potential differences in service, and I think you just need to look at that.
Yeah, that would be about the only thing. But we would still provide police service. St. John, they would still provide their same level of service. And then utilities, they already have some sort of agreement. But it wouldn't be, but you're right, there'll be maybe one or two additional things that we will have to consider.
Thank you.
What's the difference between, just asking, Cacique and my neighborhood?
In terms of what?
Anything.
Well, Cacique's not located in the town limits.
No, I know that. So what's the difference?
Well, because they're not in the town, we don't provide any services to Cacique. The town of Kiowa doesn't. We don't provide any services in there. Now, because our deputies, essentially we have contract, this is their beat. So if there is a call, they still
go through, the deputies.
They still go through, but that, we don't provide trash service.
No.
We don't do cleanup for them because they're technically in the unincorporated areas. They're not part of the town limits.
They do that themselves.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm not sure what level Kika even provides because I don't, except for allow them access onto the island.
Under contract, they do the security now, but that's just a
That's a new,
third-party contract.
and that's, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think there's between and of course your property as an owner, we do, because you have curbside service, we do trash pickup, debris pickup. We do code enforcement. We have police service.
Wasn't a good example. All right. Yes, sir.
Very quickly. Jim Jurasik, 425 C11 Accord. I just want to confirm that you agree that this can be presented as step 10, whatever the assessment report is, because that got left out in your redraft. So,
I'm sorry, I can't understand. What you're saying, present what is step 10?
That the annexation studies will be presented at the planning board hearing as part of step 10, because when you sent the redraft, that was omitted. And I'm just confirming here that the annexation studies will be presented to the public as part of step 10 that's coming up.
This is just something that's back here. You're talking about in the other parts.
Right, because that wasn't included when you did the redraft. I just want everybody to know.
Yeah, in section 5.1.
Right.
Step 10, we have Planning Commission public hearing and recommendation, and you're saying what?
If you read the...
the study, yeah.
Right, that the studies will be presented. I just want to...
Yeah, it says at this time, annexation studies will be presented to the public, to the Planning Commission, the public commission.
Right, that's terrific.
Planning Commission, yeah. It says in here.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Anything else?
I don't know if there's any other,
2.3, Steph?
okay.
2.2.
Okay, 2.3 here. This is the guiding principles for assessment of annexation. Staff, okay, so this is, of course, the recommendation of the group. I think for the most, staff, again, with the red, if this is something that we want to do, one of our concerns with some of this is that in this, they bring into the development agreements, and we don't have, and so right now, of course, this document is just a general document, so there's no development agreements for any of the undeveloped properties right now. So maybe they're referring to if we were to decide to create a new development agreement or maybe merge it into the existing development agreement. But we don't have impact fees, and if that's something that council wanted to look at and impose, that would be a separate ordinance that we would have to create, because we don't have impact fees. And I'm not sure what the community benefit agreement or agreements are that they could be referring to. So I'm just, you know, if this is something that we want to look at their language, I'm just concerned with the things that's highlighted in purple, and I just kind of thought that warranted additional discussion. Joe, did you have any comments on that? Okay.
What is the community benefit agreement?
I'm not sure, but this, I'm not sure, and they can answer that, because one of the things I was going to say, under 2.3, this is a bullet that they would like, it's the third, so this is our bullet that we have, and then this is the bullet that they want to change. So as I was saying, I don't mind making some of the changes here. I was just concerned with some of the purple areas for their bullet.
Okay.
Once again, Tim Hazel, sorry.
Tim, did you write this?
I'm sorry?
Did you write this report?
I did. So what we're talking about here is these are concepts that flow from other jurisdictions. Impact fees don't necessarily mean an impact fee based upon a schedule. An impact fee could be if we have to acquire by eminent domain a turning lane, that we force the developer to do that. So that at the end of the day, if we're going to bring somebody in as an annexed property owner, everybody else within Toki has the comfort knowing that you're not going to share costs that would be inherent with the annexation and the development on us. So that might be unartful. With respect to community benefit agreements, it's nothing more than covenants that may be imposed on the property to allow for public access over whatever the annexed property is to get to a park. So these are just concepts. These are not necessarily defined terms. They are opportunities within our policies and procedures manual to let an applicant know, hey, you better be prepared for the eventuality that you may have to give up something to benefit the public, and you may have to pay for off-site and on-site fees that, you know, we don't want to shoulder.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Brad Belt, 151 Bobcat. Apropos of the conversation was just had a moment ago about some of the differences between what KICA provides and the town. Admittedly, they're not much. I had previously circulated to staff a couple of additional bullets under guiding principles that I think might be worth reconsideration apropos of the conversation we just had. And one of those would be whether annexation would require the town to provide services or facilities not currently provided by the town to residents. Another guiding principle would be whether the town has adequate financial, personnel, or infrastructure resources to extend public services to the area to be annexed. And I might suggest a slight modification to the bullet regarding the fiscal impact of providing municipal services to read something to the effect of whether potential revenues to be generated from the area to be annexed meet the cost of providing municipal services to the area. Thank you.
So how are we leaving this?
Well, I gave my suggestions. I don't know if council has anything to add to that.
I think these are all covered in what I understand to be the feasibility study and the cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, a lot of it
So
is.
I don't see that
Some of
this
it,
is
yeah. Some of it is.
necessary.
Any other comments on that?
The problem I have with community benefit agreement is I don't know what that is. I
That's
don't
what I
know
would
what
like
it
to
would
know.
be, and it's
Yeah.
going to create confusion
I
if we
agree.
were to add this kind of language. I mean, you could use it as a for example, but when you introduce a new concept, we
To
don't
me,
have them.
that says, there's a document that says, here's the agreement between the community and
Well, it's something, so one of the things I'll work with, the group, if that's something that, if you think it caused confusion, I don't know if it requires a definition or as an example.
I think the way Tim explained it, as access through an annexed property to get to a park, I think that was a good example. I just don't think these words are maybe what best describes that, and maybe we take another cut at the language.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to be clear, I'm fine. Since this is a list of principles and considerations,
Yeah.
I mean, adding to that is, from a legal standpoint, is certainly fine.
Fine. Just
It
adds
can
more,
be 5 pages long.
more clarity.
All
Okay,
right.
number 5.
And this is the last one for this policy manual, which is the annexation narrative. And I think on here, Joe, your concern with regards to this was that, I'm sorry, but he said they all have to request a zoning classification. They suggest that the county zoning will have equivalent Toki zoning, which may not always be the case.
Oh, yeah, well,
That was your concern
Yeah.
about that. Is that still
yes,
the case?
I just, where was this? Yeah, that's what I'm trying to catch up here.
Oh,
Just that there isn't, yeah, here we go. Zoning I don't know what a zoning reclassification is in the context of annexation. I mean,
I'm
it's
guessing-
working from the assumption that property that's presumably zoned by the
county, yeah.
is going to have some readily apparent equivalent from our zoning, and I don't know that that's necessarily the case.
It's not
We're
always the case.
reclassifying zoning.
No,
We are zoning for the first time,
right.
as far as we're concerned.
True.
The state laws for I mean, we are, the goal of everything we're trying to do here is to comply with state laws for amending zoning maps. But the amendment is the addition of the property. And it does have to be zoned at that point. But just harking back to what existed before, I think I understand the desire here. And if it's something that really needs to be explored, it should be explored like, well, something a little more detailed. I mean, the density is greater than previously zoned under county law, or something along those lines.
Mr. Wilson, I don't disagree with you on this one. I think that the language.
Who are you again?
Tim Hazel, sorry. I assumed after 15 times it would. So the language is imprecise, and I think that it is presumptive that there has to be a change to the zoning map. So you are correct, Council. I think that it shouldn't read, therefore, any zoning or annexation seeking a zoning classification. I think it just needs to say any annexation necessarily requires. But the purpose of this is, and you'll find this in the materials that we go through with John and his PD zoning, there is a notion in the PD zoning proposed changes that if there is a rezoning to up the zoning classification from the pre-existing county-imposed classification. And in the case of Hallover Creek, as an example, it would be an R4, Gesundheit. In the case of the Putt-Putt parcel, it's an R4. So if you're coming back to the community, us, with an application for annexation coupled with a PD classification, then you'll see in the materials that John and I worked on, and he didn't accept, there is going to be this notion of a upzoning or a higher densification. And I think that, we can change the language there to make it work, because you're right, it doesn't.
All right. Well, then, just, with that change, staff is fine with, continue working with them to fix that language. And is there any
Okay,
questions?
let's pause at this moment. Is there any general comments relative to this policy that we just went through that haven't been covered? Anything anybody would like to add, share? Yeah.
This is a very general, Dave DiStefano, 31 Burroughs Hall. This is a very general comment. On 2.1, best interest of the municipality. The first sentence says, annexation is one of the most powerful tools available to municipalities for directing and influencing their future growth. I question whether or not the town of Kiowa Island is in favor, the community itself, in favor of future growth or non-future growth. So I just think that that's an overall general policy of the community. Are we interested at all in future growth? Thank you.
I just want to launch off of that and say something about that, since density has been brought up. Environmentally, where we are today, and where the county may have originally had something in an R4 zoning, like the Freshfields area that was under consideration. I personally find it just incredulous, I guess, that we as a citizenry could even consider higher densities. It seems to me that if somebody's coming into our town and we know all the issues associated with our flooding problems, our future, environmental outlook, that it would be a downzoning that we would philosophically always be thinking about, because the world has changed over these decades, and the idea that parcel could have had significantly higher than R4 just struck me as wow. I mean, how could Kiowa intelligently even consider that? Because in the long run, since we're talking a lot about the bearing of costs, whether it's services that we've discussed, there's a huge cost for that, and we all know it, and we've got thick studies that we've done. So I hope that philosophically, the same way that there was a very strong statement that we are unbiased, that there would be a strong statement that we are concerned environmentally about flooding and the future of all of us trying to continue to call Kiowa our home.
Kathy Pumphrey, 525 Bufflehead. I was listening to the discussion about trying to balance what staff are doing with what the community members are doing. And I think Kiowa is in a unique position where we have a lot of very qualified people who want to be involved. And I really encourage the town council to think about that rather than see it as a competition. I think that we've worked really well, the Reform It Now group has worked really well with Stephanie, trying to bring forth some ideas that are a function of experience. And I hope that the council doesn't hear that as combative or competitive. It's really, we all have the same goal in mind. Thank you.
I'm Roger Warren. I live at 8 Sand Alley, and I suppose that I represent the cause of all this at this point. And so I step into the breach, if you will. But I also recognize you all as neighbors and friends, so I think it's an opportunity just to give you a perspective. I understand what you're going through, and I think that, I don't know that we ever, as an organization, particularly the people who represented us here talking about the annexation, really gave you a clear understanding of what we were trying to do in the process of coming forward to talk to the town about annexation. Certainly right now, we have rights on that property, and it's about 150, 160 plus acres out there. When you look at it, it's probably the only piece that in the future could be considered for annexation to the town of Kiowa. So we're not dealing with this amorphous, unknown developer. We're looking at, frankly, as described, a corporate citizen of the community. So we're not somebody you don't know. We're not somebody who has got a reputation of not living up to what we say we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And frankly, all of us who live here have benefited by the development that the ownership of the Andel property, as we call it, has done. So originally we came to the community because we felt that we had a relationship as a corporate citizen. And Dave DiStefano, I'll just pick you up for one of the comments you made, because I know you can take it. I just wish you'd have shown as much concern for your fellow corporate citizen when they built Freshfields and the impact that that had on our business. So I get that, but at this point, to use them as a reason not to allow some type of development there because it wouldn't be taking care of our corporate citizens, it pales, I think, in comparison. But anyway, that was just, I just wanted to say that to you. We came to the town because we wanted to be a part of the process with you. Right. We wanted to come here and say, how do we get this done? What do we come to you with? And we are certainly well aware of traffic issues, flooding issues, environmental issues. We've demonstrated that as a corporate citizen with you as all the years we've been here. So all of this is being directed to how you want to deal with us if we decide now whether or not we want to annex to the town of Kiowa. And right now, we're not sure. Right. Plainly, we're not sure, because we get a better response from the county. And I promise you that the county really doesn't care about the town of Kiowa and what you all want. And it'll be a lot harder for you as a community to go to the county to get what you want. That's just reality. And the county has got some zoning ordinances right now that would really benefit us as a developer on that parcel that they want. I'm not sure that you all would want it, but they do. So I wanted to step up here and say, I think the process you're going through has been productive for most of you, but I do want to support the council and the KICA board, the people we elect to represent us, to go through processes and procedures to try to do the best they can for all of us. And yes, Kathy, we've got a really bunch of smart people here on this island. We got a whole lot of chiefs.
And no Indians.
Who still sometimes want to be chiefs. And it's harder being an Indian and kind of working together to get stuff done. But actually, when you look at where we are, we've done a pretty good job. This is a great place to live. This is a great place to work. And it's not by accident. It's by the work of prior town councils. It's by the work of the KICA board. And I think we should demonstrate sometimes a little more confidence in what they're doing. I am standing here as president of the resort, and to deal with any rumors, I am not retiring. I've had so many people come and say, when are you retiring? Well, you know what? I'm not retiring just to spite people right now. I'm tired of answering the question. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And so I want to tell you that the people that I represent at the resort, and I'm going to become more involved, it appears, with the real estate development, Because as you probably understand, I think, we now own the largest amount of developable land on the island.
Right.
Okay, so, and we have rights to that we've negotiated, and it was a tough negotiation with the people you elected to negotiate, and they did a great job. Much to our chagrin, they did a great job. But also, it's allowed us to build things that benefit everybody. And yes, we are going to do the West Beach project. We really are. I know I've been saying that for a few years. We're going to get it done. I'm staying until we get it done. So that's kind of the deal here. So to all of you on this process, I understand your concerns. I understand what you're worried about. But if we had come in here and gone through the annexation process as it existed, you would have been protected, because you've been dealing with us, who's your corporate citizen neighbor, looking to do what's right for the community. But I am gonna tell you, I didn't know if I would bring this up, but I was very disappointed in the meetings talking about the annexation when the point was made, because it was presented in a very loose way, that somehow we probably would do some multifamily on the property. There are people who stood up at this podium and said, I'm not sure we want those people to have a vote on what happens in our community. I'm embarrassed as a member of this community that anybody would say that. We're not elitist. At least we shouldn't be. And I think that that was a embarrassing reason given for why the annexation process should not go forward. And I hope that that isn't part of any further discussion, because we're better than that. Thank you.
Okay, council, is there a comfort level recognizing 90 minutes worth of discussion relative to what's taken place on the policy, to ask Stephanie to continue to work with the community, try to finalize language that's been an issue, and bring us the policy in March? Or should we just go right ahead and plan for a workshop in March? How do you feel, Steph, Joe? I mean, what's your thoughts?
I can go at the direction of council. Understand, though, that our March meeting is only a week from today. Right. So I'm comfortable if we push this to the April meeting that way, because I'm leaving today for a conference in Columbia. I'm not back till Friday. I'm going to be working there, but it will at least give myself and staff and my time to work with the community if we can push this back to April.
Okay, so we're going to push this off until April. So you have the month of March.
Thank you.
All right. The two sections, same, John. Well, so you'll let me know, the group, the council know, the extent to which progress is being made on the discussions and the extent to which there's a workshop needed? Or
yes.
You'll just keep working in the work group? And, all right.
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
All right.
Mayor and members of council, we're going to walk through the two zoning ordinance sections, section 1279, designation of annexed territory, and the plan development section. In your materials, you have a copy of both what the group has provided as well as staff revisions to that. There are a number of, in the red line version of what the group has provided, there are a number of really small or minor changes. I didn't put those in this presentation. The substantive changes that are noteworthy of some debate or some discussion by council, I'm going to walk through those primarily because I felt that those were important to get some guidance from your positions. Additionally, I wanted to mention two things. These documents will be reviewed by the Planning Commission, so their weight in recommending to Town Council be also a part of this process. And as part of that, as Joe kind of alluded to earlier, it's kind of difficult to wordsmith as much red line as we did get from the group, but I did my best to try to incorporate a lot of what, outside of anything that was substantively, in my opinion, encounter to the overall zoning ordinance or comprehensive plan, or from a procedural standpoint. So if anything, that feel free to stop me and as we go through this. So when we look at section 12-79, at our first workshop, I outlined the designation of annexed territory. We subsequently only included really one thing as part of this, which was the applicability to properties located outside of the town, that they would follow this annexation policy plan that we're creating. And so that's really, nothing has changed from that standpoint. In the group's suggested language, they also reference the same material. So there's no substantive changes as it pertains to those first three bullets, A, B, and C. The primary difference is this added D, zoning designation. This is the linkage in text form that allows an application to run succinctly, a annexation application to run succinctly with the zoning amendment. And so that's just the language that incorporates that. There was some discussion earlier regarding the base zoning of if a annexation application does not have a desired zoning designation, that it would be subject to the R1 zoning category. And so this is just a language that has been implied in the revisions that were provided by the group. This was excluded from that, but staff felt that this would still be important to incorporate. Okay. So that's all for section 1279.
Okay, hold on, John. Any comments?
I won't stay there. Good job. I think though that, the reference to the parallel tracking of the application and the zoning is exactly where I point to is, that to me, and it's for Mr. Wilson to decide whether or not that creates any kind of vested rights in the applicant at a time that the applicant doesn't own property within the jurisdiction. But good job.
And just because it's right in here that section D2, no permit application shall be filed until proceedings to designate the permanent zoning for the newly annexed territory has been completed. Our vested rights here in South Carolina arise out of permit applications. So this seems to foreclose. In fact, I'm sure that's why that's in there. I mean, it's a big reason why that's in there, is to preclude the arising of vested rights under South Carolina statutory law.
Could you interpret that?
Yeah, please.
Sorry, okay. So, y'all have all heard of vested rights? Those are created by a statute in South Carolina. Generally speaking, I mean, you go back and there might be some argument, but it's generally a statute that says once the town signs off on a plat or even a building permit, and there's some debate as to how early that would be. I haven't studied it.
Right.
But at the earliest, it's going to be approval of a plat. That can, with lots, buildable lots designated on it. At that point, and I want to be very careful here because there's a lot of caveats, but generally speaking, vested rights for a developer aren't going to arise until the town approves a plat or a building permit or some other permit application. You follow me? And that means, a vested right means that on down the road, there would be issues if the town took it away. Said, well, we're gonna unapprove that plat or whatever. And this is very generally speaking. I don't wanna, make any kind of admissions. It's the subject of litigation frequently. But generally speaking, a vested right under our law isn't going to arise until there's some sort of approval by the town of a permit application.
So that being said, what does this subparagraph 2 mean?
This says we're not going to approve any permit applications until the annexation is complete. And so my point of view is that solves any vested right concerns, that during that annexation review, the town's not issuing any kind of permits that would give rise to a vested right. John's, prior to the annexation being approved and finalized on that second reading, when also the zoning might be approved. Prior to that date, I don't feel like there's any vested rights arising. Because we literally cannot issue a permit application until after that is done. Does that make sense?
So you're saying we can't issue a permit application until they're actually part of the town?
That is correct.
Okay, that I understand.
That's what that says. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that I understand.
That is
Yeah.
exactly right. Yes.
Very plain.
Okay.
And because we can't do that, vested rights don't arise.
Right. Okay. I followed it out.
I'm sorry. Sometimes I get.
Well, that's all right. Later on, we'll meet and we'll discuss the surgical repair technology of flow.
Okay. Any other
And also, just, John, this may have missed, but D3 is missing a not. Zoning designation does not accompany
You're right.
the annexation.
Correct.
Okay, any other comments on 1279? Any general comments on 1279? Anything? Okay, so it's ready to go to the Planning Commission, correct, John?
Correct.
Okay, in the month of April. So if they complete their work, it'll come to council, I'm sorry, in the month of March, it'll come to council.
I don't think you're going to put this on the March agenda, because that would just be next Wednesday.
Yeah, that's next Wednesday, so
So it's
it'll
gonna
be
be
a bit
April.
soon. So, yeah.
Fine, whenever it works on the
Yeah.
agenda. Okay, all right, okay. Last one?
So the other section, section 12-159, which is the provisions for our plan development. Bear with me, this it's a little more lengthy, but I would do my best to capture what I intend, the intent of staff suggested language versus the group suggestions. Where there are, in your materials in the red line copy, where there are, like I mentioned earlier, where there are things that have been outlined in red, those are areas that I think are worth some discussion. And the first being the purpose and intent. This is section B of the first section there. What I wanted to do is eliminate a lot of redundancy or things that are duplicative. And so that's the reduction in staff's language, where there were several references to it. For example, the comprehensive plan. In that staff suggested language, we do have a reference that the intentions are to encourage achievement of the goals of the comp plan, and to keep it as streamlined as possible, removing some language that were duplicative in nature, was sort of the first swipe at the purpose and intent. For the most part, most of the language marries to what the group suggested, outside of sort of some redundancy were thoughts that I prepared. Just let me know if I should just keep going to. So section, I'm sorry, one more thing on the, I'm sorry, yeah, section C, applicability. primary, I guess, differences there, also some redundancy in language. I want to clarify, though, that a plan development application is a request for a specific zoning destination. So that in tune is a rezoning. I think the additional language, like I said, it's a little bit verbose in language to add some things that are already in intent in the ordinance itself, as a plan development is a customized zoning district, so that in the process of anyone applying for a PD, that would entail start the rezoning process. The other part of this I wanted to capture in this section is the applicability that the plan development section, although we are sort of addressing some of the plan development section based on the annexation concerns, but this document still stands alone absent of an annexation request. And so hypothetically, if there was a property owner that was already part of the town that wanted to apply for plan development, I wanted to make sure that that language was still embedded, that anything that didn't compromise, that anything that was proposed as part of the annexation conversation. So inherently trying to separate the annexation policy out of the plan development zoning ordinance, not explicitly, but those things that are specifically referencing annexation from an applicable standpoint, in tune representing that in our policy document, that's a little bit more robust. The other part of this, the language that's proposed as part of the plan development language, I think we addressed it, the vested rights piece, as Council Wilson alluded to. The other part of that, as I said, when a plan development application is applied for, that sort of dictates what is prepared by the applicant as far as what they would want in their customized zoning ordinance. And so that in itself would dictate the level of scrutiny by Planning Commission and Council that we're taking an extra step to review all those different standards that we'll look through in the next section, that this is a heightened level of scrutiny, if you will, compared to just a regular rezoning from one established zoning district to another established zoning district as part of our ordinance that we have already. Are there any questions on that section?
Tim Hazel. I think that when we were looking at, and we had a discussion involving the Charleston County PD ordinance, where you great in borrowing from some of the language. That language that you're opposing now was taken straight from the Charleston County, where if you're looking at a densification as part of a PD plan, you have to treat it with a heightened degree of scrutiny, even though presumably you're rezoning. So that language was taken directly from Chapter 29 of the Charleston County zoning code. So I don't know why you oppose it.
I didn't necessarily oppose the language itself in the nature of it being a heightened level of scrutiny. I'm just saying the differences between a standard rezoning process of going from, let's just say, from R1 or a different residential category, where those are established as part of an existing designation. A applicant who is requesting a plan development, they would require to develop each and every standard as part of that zoning district. So that in itself inherently applies a greater level of scrutiny. I would be comfortable adding that specific language of densification back in there. I mean, it's not it's just, for me, I think it's a little bit redundant. That's all.
Okay, I disagree, but thank you. Do you have the section?
Yeah, I have it. Yeah.
Thanks.
We move to development standards, which is Part D. So the group's comments are based on the differences that they've inserted here requires development standards to be set forth in the applicant's PD plan, and also I'll just use your language, Tim, there makes it a little bit easier. Affirmatively states that standards of the original zoning district may be altered, but only if the town determines if that serves an overriding public interest. That's also language that's from the county zoning ordinance. The part of why I left it out of the staff's recommendation or suggested language is that when applicants propose I'll just read my comments here. Applicants, when they propose their plan development, they shall list out all those dimensional standards. If there's a case where an applicant for an existing plan development would like to modify one of those dimensional standards, it may be creating some conflict. I'll use the town hall site for example. If we wanted to today customize the plan, our plan development where town hall sits to, let's just say, increase the buffers based on the existing today buffers, then the statement of saying that the applicant shall not propose any alteration to the standards, I think that that creates a conflict. I would be suggestive to add the language after reading through this last night to suggest that we could add discretion to the planning director, give that modification alteration that gives some discretion there. So if that, I don't know if that comes off as clear as I'm trying to deliver it there, but the concern is that if there's a part of, if you go to page 2 of 8 in the red line version of your materials, you'll see under development standards, the dimensional standards, architectural standards, lots, access, commercial areas. These are the things that we would have an applicant respond to specifically as part of their plan development. If you look at the first one, dimensional standards, each lot located on the perimeter of the plan development shall maintain the rear setback requirements and any buffer requirements of the adjacent zoning district. If we wanted to go more restrictive than the adjacent zoning district, then that statement would kind of create a conflict. And so leaving it up to staff would give that discretion to say we can go exceed what is already in a part of the base of the development standards.
So you're saying that if they had a standard that said they had a setback of 15 yards, but we said no, we want this to be 30 yards. We would, if this sentence stays in there, we couldn't make that adjustment.
Correct.
Okay. In that case, I think that sentence should probably not be in there.
It's just a little bit too restrictive from staff's perspective of allowing some of the flexibility that when you do present a plan development, you want to be able to have some of those things that you can customize. Oh, okay.
Can we get you a chair?
Just pull it right next to the
I think deleting that, I like your suggestion that you leave it in, but you allow for discretion so that it isn't absolute. I think and this is based on the Charleston County zoning ordinance. So I do agree that there may be an instance where you want a more restrictive, change, and that would prevent that from happening. So I don't disagree, but I don't think it should be removed.
Okay.
So again, John, you'll get.
I think that's something we are going to amend some language there and present a new draft. Community workshop. Like I said, I didn't go through every single point, but I thought it would be important to look at some of the things that I know were from our last workshop that were items of discussion. One thing that I did have sort of problem with was the section F4, which is community workshop. This section suggests that after a pre-application meeting, the applicant shall hold at least one community workshop. And it lists out the purpose of the community workshop. Whereas the group suggested that one community workshop should be held. That was a revision that I think we both agreed on, that at least one. They took it a little further and added sort of a clause that if issues aren't resolved, or community concerns aren't resolved, then that would require an additional community workshop. I don't have an issue with how many workshops it takes to get to a level of understanding. The issue that I do have is that those workshops are not to resolve community concerns between developer and the
council,
the community, but creating that venue separately allows council to hear the concerns. I'm sorry, let me rephrase. The workshops are a venue for the developer to hear the community's concerns, not to address every single, resolve all of those issues or concerns that a community may have. The opportunity for that is once the developers had the opportunity to hear some of those concerns, they can amend their plan as they're part of their presentation back to council. Say, we've heard these things from the community. That does not stop the community from adding their concerns back to when this comes before for council, but to be able to use the council and planning commission venues to hear all of that dialogue to maybe resolve some of those issues is the accurate venue from staff's perspective. We don't want to create a situation where and it's good that this happens naturally outside of formal meetings, but it doesn't want to be embedded directly into the zoning ordinance to where we're forcing a developer to respond to every issue or concern that a community may raise to resolve that issue.
So, Tim Hazel, so the intent isn't to force any number of workshops, certainly to have one, but in exercising your discretion, if you would believe that it would help the community and the developer in this case work together, you don't have to build unanimous consensus, but you do have to try to address some of the overwhelming concerns, and if you believe in perhaps changing the language, that you have the ability within your sole discretion to require additional workshops. I think that would be appropriate, but you know, I don't know that workshops are a bad thing.
I agree. I don't think workshops are a bad thing how it started. Hypothetically, if we look at today's workshop, it's a series of workshops that we've been having. If we feel that we haven't reached that threshold, it would naturally move that process along. And so I think it takes that same approach of if the developer comes to the town with an application, they've met with the community has voiced those concerns to the developer, and both the town has a summation of concerns from the developer, what they've heard from the community, and a summation of directly from the community of what they've heard. Town council, our evaluating bodies, can take those things in consideration to make that determination. Hey, we're not ready to act on this. Can we, at this time, encourage another workshop? So,
Tim Hazel, don't disagree. I think, though, that I missed the word recommended. I think that the provision isn't intended to jam a countless number of workshops down somebody's throat. It's to allow the community an opportunity, and for you all, as ears and eyes of the community, to say, well, you know what, I think we need additional workshops. If you don't have that language in there, and I'm a developer, I'd say I'm only required to have one. I'm not going to have any more. So I think that's why it's there.
So I do want to add to this point, the section, if we flip to so I'm on page 4 of 8, the community workshop. This would be the first instance of sort of public engagement. This is not the only instance of public engagement, but this is the first That would be from a required standpoint. The others, you still would have the opportunity during our planning commission, once this application does move forward, as well as town council public hearings. So there will be several opportunities for public engagement. But I don't disagree if innately, when I meet with an applicant and they haven't prepared, and we've had that sort of second meeting of, hey, I've presented initial concept, I've met with community members. At that point is when time I've evaluated, okay, these are some things that I know council would be concerned about, planning commission would be concerned about. And if those level of details may not be there, then I would encourage that we have a workshop for council or for planning commission. So I agree. I don't think that there's a difference. I think we can probably have modify that to meet those concerns. Section 5. This is a very brief section here. It's regarding stormwater. I thought this was really good to put in as a provision regarding part of the application process. The only sort of concern is the level of detail that may be part of this narrative. So it's just brevity of the staff suggested language, but I think it still encapsulates everything that was suggested by the group as far as stormwater is concerned, of just having an understanding of the design, who is maintained and would be managed in the future. The approval criteria, I think we'll have some discussion on this from council. At our previous February 8th meeting, there were a number of lists of suggested adding additional approval criteria. As you'll see in the proposed language, there are 3, and Joe, you might need your help in describing this section, but 3 approval criteria, and then there's an additional 3 sort of objectives that town council will consider as part of that review process. And those 3 were added based on sort of a discussion, I think, in wanting to take them into some of the suggestions that the community raised. The development's impact on health, safety, and the general welfare of the public. That's inherently already done by the basics of our zoning ordinance, our comprehensive plan. So it does feel, in my opinion, a little bit duplicative, and as well as the developer's potential adverse on impact and natural environment, stormwater, air, noise, etc. Those are all sort of embedded in sort of some of the things that we've looked at as far as middle application and review process. And then any factors that the town council deems appropriate to consider, sort of a catch-all. So I think, Joe, if you want to maybe elaborate on.
Well, just my problem with the 3 points was the mandatory language. And we tried to adjust that. I made it separate just to keep as much of the language as possible. But I changed it from mandatory to, frankly, just another factor for the town to consider.
Yeah, I'm concerned about, like, the development will protect the health.
Right.
You know, that's asking a lot.
I
don't think we can ask a development to protect the health of anybody.
I'm not sure that's even the intent, frankly.
Right. Impact on health, safety, gotcha.
Any comments on that?
Tim Hazel. So I'm sort of not following. So D, E, and F are provisions that we propose that you're not going to include. Is that how I read that, or?
Yeah. So what I suggested is that D, E, and E you've had it added to our original A, B, and C numbered letters, okay, approval criteria, revising that A, D, E, and E become a separate clause of the town will consider A, B, and C. So yes, we would not include
but you're going to address it through consideration on a mandatory.
So,
A, B, C.
if I address them individually, the D, I think we've addressed that this is pretty broad in nature for approval criteria to be added. And then E, development will not result in significant adverse impacts to the natural environment. Okay. The evaluation of the application will capture all of that. And so I think the determining factor for that, we've wanted to include it based on this discussion, so that's why it's been shifted over to sort of a...
So I guess you seem to have captured in A, B, and C what is in D, E, and F, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I don't think, I mean, if you look at the material, the draft, I mean, I assume staff's okay with, I mean, I think I did this change.
Yeah, yeah.
They're included as factors.
Okay.
They're just the mandatory language.
Oh, okay.
Will protect.
Okay, so
will not result.
So, and you're taking will and turning.
Instead of the town
reads like
will
this.
also consider
Gotcha. Okay.
the development's impact on health, safety,
call that up.
the development's potential adverse impact on the natural environment.
Okay.
Any other factors that the town deems appropriate
Gotcha.
to consider.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
No, I mean to be transparent. F would be sort of that capture all, if you will. I mean, we talked about how earlier point of costs of potential feasibility analysis and that kind of thing.
So to that point, though, I guess, are we saying there might be an instance, and I know that a responsible developer isn't going to try and jam a cost, his or her cost down the throats of the municipality that's opened their doors up to allow for the development, but are you saying that you don't feel comfortable with an absolute determination that the people of Toki aren't going to have to pay for the traffic circle or the turning lane or the stoplight that would be necessary because of the plans?
I don't think, well, I'll just add, I don't think that we could put that language in there because future councils with regards to the annexation, for whatever purpose, when they do the feasibility study, they may feel that it's a cost that the town would take on, not saying for whatever reason. It could be the additional police that we know that we will have to provide. That may be something that the future council decides that they want to take on that cost. Or it could be that if they need infrastructure, that council could decide to put in a municipal special purpose district to handle those things. So I think to add something that's absolute as opposed to C, I think that would be staff's recommendation.
So this is in reference, though, to a PD.
Right.
It's separate from the annexation issue. And,
Right.
and you know, I guess the point is, if I'm doing a development up in the Northeast, I can't even propose something that would...
Yeah, but if you do one, say here, even for PD, an elected council, they could decide for whatever reason, it could be in lieu of, it could be a variety of different reasons why they may decide to take on that cost. Or they may decide to take on that cost, but just require it of that particular development. Individuals take on that cost through a municipal special purpose district. There could be a number of things, but to say that neither the town nor the community will be responsible, I don't think you can I don't think you can force this council to make that determination.
I think it's a consideration, it isn't a requirement anymore.
Yeah, so I think having it C, any other factors that town council deems appropriate to consider. So we'll be recommending A, B, and C, right? And not F.
Yeah, the recommendation is for A, B, and C.
Right.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, thank you.
Mr. Mayor? I announced earlier that I have a 12:30 meeting, so I'm going to have to leave now. This has been very, very instructive, and it has certainly been reaffirming in terms of my career choice.
And I'll get any comments.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, I have your comments. Thank you.
Maura McElvain, 146 Blue Heron Pond Road. I guess the only thing I would wonder is whether, as a compromise on your proposed second C, because there's an ABC above that, and the F, whether you can add the concept in F that the group suggested as C, meaning whether or not the town and community will be responsible, and then add as D any other factors. In other words, make it
not mandatory, but a consideration, and move it over as a C, and then have D, any other factors that the town deems appropriate to consider. I think cost is important.
Cost is important, but one thing that I would share in adding that, if in future developments, there are opportunities for public-private sector partnership, and so
Right.
this would somewhat kind of preclude maybe that happening, and I would not want that to be something that is dictated by the zoning ordinance, but that's dictated by something that council and the community developer kind of say, this is a cost-sharing opportunity here, beyond something that's required by a developer to onsuit the full cost of something.
I think, John, what they're asking is that under that, if you go back, so F, we can probably wordsmith that and move it under, because it's a consideration, it's not a requirement. It's just something that council will consider, and if the council considers it, they may say, yeah, we considered it, and no, it's not a great idea, we're going to absorb the cost, or we're going to push the cost onto the developer. So it's not a mandate, so it's just a consideration. So we can
And I
work with
kind of
them.
agree with that.
We can work with them on the language and move it under consideration.
But yeah, just any cost the town would have to bear is an appropriate consideration.
Right, because then, yeah.
What you know, my concern about the way it states today is, if you read the language carefully, you could, and theoretically, let's say the roundabout, let's pick on the roundabout,
Yeah.
is at 95% capacity. And then any development kicks it up a little bit and you reach 100. So I'm the developer, I'm gonna have to pay
Okay.
for the complete rebuilding of the roundabout because
Right.
I went from 95 to 100?
No.
Doesn't make sense.
Right.
And that's what that says.
Right,
You
the
can't
way that
say
it's worded now, it says that. And
Yeah.
so we would just have to soften that language and put it under consideration.
John, just Brad Belt, 151 Bobcat, at least with respect to A, where you moved the suggested group language into the town shall consider, I would simply note that the enabling statute in South Carolina that provides for planned development districts specifically says the purpose is to promote and protect the public health, safety, and general welfare. So that's not a consideration. That's supposed to be the driving purpose of the planned development district. So
Yeah.
I might think that that one would be moved up, even if the other two stay below.
I mean, that kind of goes back to some of the original of like duplicative reintroducing some of the concepts that are already part of state law or comprehensive plan. And so, I don't know, Joe, if you want to add anything there.
No, I think I made my point.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, we still have some work, it's just, some of the things it's just wordsmithing it.
That is all of this, the sort of principal areas that I thought were worth sharing to have some discussion on. I think next steps, I'll refine a working draft to bring back.
And we'll share with,
Yeah.
we'll share with them.
Any other comments?
Everyone, our changes.
Any comments? Yes, ma'am.
Council has spent, and the mayor have spent, an inordinate amount of time trying to work with the community. And I find myself again coming up and thanking you for that.
Thank you.
It is, it's nice to see, and it means something to everyone who came and everyone who's concerned about these issues. And obviously, you've put a lot of time, staff has put a lot of time, and I think it's obvious we, from the community, have also put a lot of time into thinking about things, trying to make things better. But the opportunity, now our third opportunity, or fourth opportunity to be before you, is appreciated, and I did want to express that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So these two, where's John? These two go to the planning commission in,
Well, right now, I think we're gonna make some changes.
Some changes?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you're comfortable, we may end up coming right back to you all before, make sure we get blessing before we go to the planning commission.
All right. Is there any magic to the sequence in terms of if the sections would come before the policy, or does that not matter?
I don't know if it's sequence, because the annexation policy is by resolution, and ultimately, when we're ready, that can come first.
Okay.
But I don't know if there's a sequence, because we don't really have an application before. Meaning, does the ordinance stuff we can essentially bring this all to them at one time,
To the planning commission?
to the council. Once the planning commission gives their recommendation, we can then bring this at
The
one
only
time.
from my point of view, the main thing is having the planning commission first.
Yeah.
And then council.
He's just talking about you're talking about from the ordinance. He's asking, no. Yeah.
Well, all I would say, I thank you again. You know, I said that back in January when this thing, arose, and yes, we have very talented people with long histories of experience. So thank you, and time this morning. So much appreciated.
About the council members' comments?
Oh, please comment.
Okay. I want to take this opportunity to thank Stephanie and John and any
Thank
other
you.
staff members that have assisted in this, and also to thank the group, especially Tim Hazel, for his oratory skills and teaching me this new word, surpluge. But I think there is a lot of work, a lot of interest, and I think it's gone very well.
Good. John, anything to add? Dan?
Tim, I would only say next time, get a seat over there, because it'll save you a lot of time and effort. To everybody, believe me, your input is very much appreciated by the town, and we thank you.
Enjoy this beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Meeting's adjourned.
Meeting's adjourned.
Mayor, and we're gonna meet with John to talk about the noise ordinance.
Yes, but I'm gonna go to the boys' room first.
Okay, fine.
Me too.
Well, no, how about Dan and I meet with you first, and then the mayor.
What do we meet?
Huh?
What do we meet?
Us three are meeting.
We're going to meet first.
Oh,